Hi, enjoy listening. Harper, just picture it. Crisp air, trees that actually change colour, a place where we can breathe. Jack's voice was low, persuasive, threaded with the excitement of someone already half dreaming. We won't find peace like that in the middle of Chicago. Harper Monroe folded her arms and leaned against the marble countertop of their modern high-rise apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering cityscape behind her. But she wasn't admiring it. She was staring at her husband. "You say that like we live in a war zone," she said with a half smile. "Jack, we have everything here. Work, friends, the best healthcare, my office." "Our life," he interrupted gently. "Our real life could be out there, Harper. Somewhere quieter, safer." "Safer?" she repeated, eyebrow raised. Jack shrugged. "When we talk about having a family, don't you want our kid to grow up with trees and bike rides and stars at night, not sirens and smog?" That word, family, landed differently. Harper glanced away, her defences softening just a little. She wasn't ready to admit it out loud, but she had been thinking about children more and more. Jack knew that. She turned back to him. "Where is this magical place exactly?" His eyes lit up as he pulled out his phone. 2 hours outside the city. A house came up in a village called Glenwood Falls. It's not huge, but it's got charm, space, and more than a little potential. "Khan, look." He handed her the phone. The photos showed a farmhouse-style home, nestled at the edge of a wooded area. The front porch was crooked, the siding weathered, but it did have charm. A swing on a sagging tree branch, a stone path leading to the door. There was something about it that tugged at Harper's sense of nostalgia, though she had never lived in the countryside a day in her life. "It's quaint," she said slowly. Jack stepped behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "It's ours if we want it. I already spoke with the agent. No one's lived there in years. They're asking next to nothing." "Jack," she warned, twisting in his arms. "Are you telling me you already made an offer?" He smiled, unrepentant. "Not officially. I was waiting for you." Harper sighed, letting herself lean against his chest. "You always do this. You know how hard I work to make sure everything is controlled." "I know," he murmured into her hair. "And I love that about you. But maybe it's time we loosen the grip a little." Her eyes met his, searching for that look that always settled her. Jack Morgan was good-looking in an unassuming way, boyish, athletic, with a mop of dark hair that never quite behaved. He was the kind of man people trusted instinctively. And maybe that was why she said, against all her better judgment, "Fine, let's go see it." He grinned like a kid. The drive to Glenwood Falls the next weekend felt like a time warp. Harper hadn't left the city for this kind of landscape in years. Cornfields, old diners, roadside fruit stands. The house was even more worn down in person, but it had an undeniable pull. "Just imagine," Jack whispered as they stepped onto the porch. "A little renovation, a nursery upstairs, morning coffee right here." Harper tried not to show how much that vision affected her. She ran a hand over the chipped wood of the banister. "We'd need a contractor, maybe a full crew." Jack's eyes sparkled. "Or we could do it ourselves, bit by bit, make it ours." The lock on the front door stuck, but Jack managed to force it open. The inside smelled of dust and something old, almost sweet. The floors creaked with every step. The wallpaper was peeling in corners, and the radiator wheezed when Jack tried to turn it on. Still, Harper couldn't deny the quiet that settled around them. A kind of stillness she'd forgotten existed. "I hate that I don't hate it," she muttered. Jack pulled her close. "That's all I needed to hear." They stood there for a long moment, breathing in the silence, as if trying to hear their future in it. What neither of them knew, as the sun began to set behind the woods and the house cast long shadows over the porch, was that they were being watched. From behind a dense thicket of alder trees, a man crouched, his clothing dusty, his expression unreadable. His sharp eyes studied the couple, lingering longer than comfort would allow. He knew that man, Jack. He knew that face. But that wasn't the name he'd used last time. The next morning, Harper stood barefoot in the kitchen of their apartment, stirring oat milk into her coffee. Jack had already left for an early meeting, and she was alone with her thoughts, and a freshly printed purchase agreement sitting on the granite counter. She glanced at it for the 5th time that morning. They had decided to buy the house. She wasn't sure if it was the idea of starting fresh in a new place, the whisper of family and safety, or just Jack's enthusiasm that had tipped the scale. Maybe all of it. Harper Monroe had spent the last 5 years rebuilding her father's logistics business after he died suddenly in a highway crash. She was 29 and already the CEO of Monroe Freight. Power had never been a dream. Survival had. Until Jack. Jack made things lighter. Still, there was a piece of her that stayed alert, a part trained to ask, "What's the angle?" Her phone vibrated. "Jack, inspection set for Friday. They want us there by 10 a.m. I'll bring coffee and bribes for the inspector." Harper smiled faintly. She replied with a thumbs up and turned her attention back to her planner, trying to rearrange meetings. That same morning, in the woods behind Alder Lane, Eli Carter stirred from a restless sleep. He lay on a pile of old sleeping bags in what had once been a horse shed. Broken boards let slithers of light through the roof, and a raccoon had knocked over his food bin again. Eli sat up slowly, joints aching, brushing leaves from his greying curls. The house, that house, wasn't supposed to have anyone in it. He'd been squatting on the land for nearly 3 years, keeping to himself, fixing what he could, chasing away raccoons and trespassers alike. Then came Jack. Or whoever the hell he really was. Eli remembered faces. especially the ones that lied. A week ago, the man had shown up with a woman who looked like she'd walked out of a catalogue. Tall, flashy, loud. Not the redhead with clear eyes and natural grace he'd seen yesterday. The first woman had called the man Brennan. Now he was Jack. Eli didn't like this. He didn't like any of it. He rubbed his temples and looked toward the house. Two silhouettes moved behind the gauzy curtains. Jack and the redhead, talking, laughing. She didn't know. He could tell. Friday came with overcast skies and muddy roads. Harper stood with her arms crossed, watching the home inspector poke through the attic access with a flashlight. Jack was helping the inspector test window seals while making enthusiastic small talk. He had a talent for charm. People warmed to him easily. "So?" Harper asked when the inspector descended the attic stairs. "Nothing life-threatening," he said. "Your roof's aging but holding. Floor joists in the back den need reinforcement." One odd thing, though. Harper's brows lifted. "Go on." "Someone's been up there recently. Dust was disturbed, and there's an empty can of beans tucked behind the chimney." Jack laughed a little too quickly. "Probably a raccoon that learned how to shop." The inspector gave him a look. "Well, I'll finish the report tonight." When he left, Jack wrapped his arms around Harper from behind. "Well, thoughts?" Harper hesitated. "You don't think it's weird? Someone's been in the attic?" "It's a rural property," he said smoothly. "Could have been a squatter or some local kid. Look, if it helps you feel better, I'll get cameras installed before we even move in." She nodded slowly. The worry in her gut hadn't gone away. That night, Eli sat cross-legged in the shed, writing in a battered composition notebook by flashlight. March 3. He's using a new name again. That woman, she doesn't know she's in danger. He closed the book and exhaled through his nose. He'd kept his head down for years, avoided the world, paid for his mistakes. But something about this situation made him restless, angry even. He wasn't going to let another woman walk into a trap. Later that week, Harper returned to the house alone. Jack had left early, saying he had a last-minute meeting in the city. She came to drop off samples of paint and meet with a carpenter. After the carpenter left, she stood alone in the backyard. The wind was strong, and somewhere a screen door banged rhythmically in the distance. She walked toward the barn to secure it when she spotted him. A man, standing just beyond the tree line, watching her. She froze. "Hey!" He didn't move. "Are you lost?" He stepped forward slowly. "Didn't mean to scare you." His voice was low, calm. He looked rough around the edges. Sun-worn face, heavy denim jacket. Eyes that seemed too tired for his age. Not threatening. Not exactly. "I've seen you around," Harper said cautiously. "Yeah, I've been living on the edge of the property a while. My name's Eli." She took another step forward. "Did you live in the house?" He shook his head. "No, just the shed out back. No harm meant. Didn't know anyone was ever gonna come back. Harper studied him. There was something about the way he looked at her. Not hungry, not hostile, just sad. I should probably ask you to leave the property, she said, voice uncertain. Eli nodded. Understandable. Then, after a pause, he added, Ma'am, do you know the man you're with? The words landed like a punch. Harper's mouth went dry. Excuse me? I seen him here before. He used a different name. Was with another woman. They talked about the house like it was theirs. You're mistaken. I don't think I am. Harper backed up a step. You need to go. Now. I will, Eli said. But just be careful. Please. He turned and walked into the trees, vanishing as quickly as he'd appeared. Harper stood in the silence, long after he was gone, her skin prickling with goosebumps. Something had shifted. She could feel it in her bones. And for the first time since saying yes to the house, she didn't feel safe. Harper didn't mention Eli to Jack right away. She told herself it was because she wasn't sure what to say, not because she didn't trust him. But the man's warning had taken root. Do you know the man you're with? She tried to shake it off. Eli could have been mentally unwell, or mistaken, or desperate for attention. She'd met plenty of drifters who invented stories just to feel heard. Still, her instincts, honed by years in business, wouldn't quiet down. That night, Jack came home in high spirits. Guess who got us a killer deal on new appliances? He announced as he dropped grocery bags on the kitchen island. Wasn't even planning to. Just saw this guy loading a fridge into his van. Got to talking. You would have been proud of me, Harp. Negotiated like a pro. She offered a smile, too thin to be convincing. Where exactly were you today? She asked, pretending to sort through the bags. Oh, Metamora. The appliance guy was on the way back. Why? Harper shrugged. Just wondered. Jack glanced at her, then back to unloading. Everything okay? Sure. But that night, while Jack slept, Harper sat up in bed with her laptop open. The glow of the screen lit her worried face. She typed in a phrase she'd never imagined searching. Jack Morgan, alias Fraud Arrest, Illinois. Nothing. She tried his email address, his phone number, his face. Still nothing. Just when she was about to close her laptop, she remembered Eli's other words. He used a different name, Brennan. So she searched again. Brennan Fraud Inheritance, Glenwood Falls. And there it was, an archived article from 5 years ago. The name was Brennan Lowell, but the face was Jack's. Slightly younger, but unmistakable. It was a local piece from Michigan, detailing an investigation into a man accused of manipulating and defrauding a widowed woman in Traverse City. Charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, but the money, nearly $500,000, was never recovered. Harper's heart pounded. She clicked through to the comments. One read, "He called himself Derek when he was in Arkansas. Same pattern. Charming, too good to be true, gone with everything. She closed the laptop, breath shallow. The next day, Harper returned to Glenwood Falls without telling Jack. This time, she went straight to the shed. Eli was outside, collecting sticks for a fire pit. When he saw her, he froze, expecting anger or worse. Instead, Harper lifted a small paper bag from her passenger seat. "Brought coffee. Hope you take it black." Eli blinked, then slowly nodded. "That's mighty kind." They sat on cinder blocks behind the shed, sipping in silence for a few minutes. Then Harper broke it. "You were right," she said quietly. "I looked him up. I found his other name. Brennan Lowell." Eli stared at her over his coffee. "You okay?" "No," she admitted. "I feel stupid, used. I trusted him so much. I didn't even run a background check. I run them on interns, Eli. Interns." "You're not stupid," he said. "He's good at what he does. That's what makes people like him dangerous." "I gave him everything," she whispered. "He knows everything about my business, my family, my finances." Eli's expression hardened. "Then you're not safe." They sat in the wind for a while, the only sound the rustling of leaves. Did he ever mention what he was planning? Eli hesitated. "Just bits and pieces. That first time I saw him, he was with another woman. Blonde, plastic. Called her Ulissa or Uli or something like that. They were laughing about how this one's loaded but doesn't act like it. He said he'd marry you quick, and then..." He stopped. Harper's mouth went dry. "And then what?" Eli didn't answer. He didn't have to. She stood up, brushing dirt off her coat. "I need to go. I have to figure out what to do." "Don't go back alone." "I won't," but she did. That evening, Jack was sitting on the couch when she walked into their apartment. The lights were low, the TV humming quietly. "Hey, babe," he said. "You were gone a while. Everything okay?" She looked at him differently now. Every word he spoke felt like it belonged to someone else. "Just errands," she said smoothly. "Hey, can you do me a favor and grab the charger from my nightstand?" "Sure." As he disappeared into the bedroom, Harper opened the small desk drawer in the hallway and pulled out the flash drive she always kept there. It had encrypted backups of all her financial files, including accounts he didn't know existed. She slipped it into her coat pocket just as Jack reappeared. "Got it," he said, handing her the charger. "Thanks." She smiled, though it made her stomach twist. "I'm thinking we head back to the house this weekend. Make some real progress on the renovations." Jack beamed. "Now that's the spirit." But Harper was already thinking one step ahead. She was going to set a trap. Harper didn't sleep much that night. She stared at the ceiling in the dark, calculating her next moves like a chess master staring down a dangerous opponent. By morning, she had a plan. Jack was in the kitchen making eggs when she joined him, dressed in jeans, boots, and a thick hoodie. "Look at you," he smiled. "Country ready already?" "I figured if I'm going to commit to this place, I'd better start getting my hands dirty." He grinned. and slid a plate across the counter. "You're gonna love what I ordered for the bedroom. Antique bed frame, solid walnut. Delivered tomorrow." Harper forced a laugh. "As long as you didn't max out the card again." He winked. "What are maxed out cards for, if not starting a dream life with the woman you love?" She took her plate and sat across from him, pretending to chew while her mind raced. She knew exactly what he was doing, spending her money faster than she could track. But not all of it. She'd moved a significant portion into protected trust accounts the night before. Jack wouldn't notice for a few days, maybe longer. But this wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about staying alive. By Saturday, they were back at the house on Alder Lane. Jack unpacked supplies from the truck while Harper cleaned out the front hall closet. Though in reality, she was carefully placing a small audio recorder inside a basket of old hats. She repeated the process in the guest bedroom, behind a framed painting. Then the kitchen, behind a stack of cookbooks. Harper wasn't sure what exactly she was hoping to catch. Confession? A phone call? She wasn't naive enough to think Jack would slip up easily. But she also knew men like him eventually revealed themselves, if you let them believe they'd already won. By late afternoon, Jack was out back, repainting a section of the porch railing, while Harper wandered inside under the pretense of measuring the guest bathroom. Instead, she headed to the attic. The ladder creaked under her weight. Each step made her stomach clench. Upstairs, the attic was empty now, at least visibly. But a strange scent lingered, something like stale smoke and chemical cleaner. She knelt near the chimney and ran her fingers along the floorboards. Sure enough, there was a hairline crack in one of them. Carefully, Harper pried it open. Inside was a small cloth pouch containing a flash drive, a burner phone, and a folded receipt dated just 10 days ago. The name on the receipt, Ulyssa Granger. He left his evidence here? She thought, stunned. Because he thought no one would ever check? She pocketed the items and closed the floorboard gently. The adrenaline pumping through her veins made her hands shake, but she forced herself to stay calm. Jack was still outside, but then a voice from the stairwell cut through the silence. "Harper?" Her heart stopped. She hadn't heard him come in. "I'm up here," she said, voice steady. "Just checking the insulation." His footsteps started up the stairs. She stood up quickly and met him halfway down. "Everything okay?" he asked, breathless. "Yeah," she said, "just dusty." He looked at her for a beat too long. "You sure you're feeling all right lately?" "Why?" "Just asking." He smiled, but there was something behind his eyes, something sharper. That night, after dinner, Harper waited until Jack was asleep before slipping into the guest room. She plugged the flash drive into her laptop and opened the contents. There were dozens of folders, each labeled with a different woman's name. She clicked on the one marked E. Monroe. Inside were screenshots of her personal bank logins, photographs of legal documents, even a copy of her passport. There was also an audio recording, dated just 3 days ago. She clicked it. Jack's voice played back through her speakers. "Give it another week. She's almost there. I'll get her to change the will next. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. She's crazy about the baby idea. Once that's in motion, we're golden." Harper pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle the cry that rose in her throat. The baby. He'd weaponized the one thing she was just beginning to let herself want. She closed the laptop slowly and leaned back in the chair, heart racing. He wasn't just conning her. He was planning to erase her. The next morning, she called Eli. He answered after 2 rings. "Yeah?" "I need your help," she said. "I have proof." "Where are you?" "At the house." "Get out." "I can't, not yet. But I need to talk to someone in law enforcement, quietly. Someone who won't tip him off." Eli was silent for a second. Then, "I know someone. He owes me. You trust me?" Harper hesitated. "Yes," she said finally. "I do." An hour later, a black SUV pulled up the dirt road and parked near the edge of the property. Harper watched through the window as Eli emerged from the woods and spoke to a man in a dark jacket. They exchanged a quiet nod. Eli walked to the porch. "His name's Travis, former county detective. Got booted for digging too deep into a developer's fraud case. But he still has friends. I need to keep Jack here for a few more days," Harper said. "Long enough to gather the rest. I want him arrested when he least expects it." Eli raised an eyebrow. "You planning to bait him?" "I'm planning to finish what he started," she said. "Only this time, I'll be the one pulling the strings." Harper stood at the mirror, adjusting the neckline of her cream sweater and brushing a touch of colour onto her lips. Her reflection looked calm, composed, but inside, her nerves twisted like wire. Today, she needed to be the perfect wife. Loving, trusting, naive. She needed Jack to believe everything was as it had been. That she hadn't found the flash drive. That she wasn't 3 steps ahead of him. He couldn't know that Travis, Eli's contact, had already begun investigating. That she handed over the audio recording. That they'd matched his fingerprints from a discarded mug to at least 2 open warrants under different names. She took one last look at herself. "Smile like you used to," she told her reflection. "He doesn't know you're awake now." Downstairs, Jack was at the stove, flipping pancakes like a man in the middle of a Hallmark movie. "There she is," he said brightly. "Morning, sleepyhead. We're officially domestic." Harper leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I could get used to this." He plated a stack of pancakes and turned, giving her a playful look. "You say that now. Just wait till I put you in charge of painting the basement ceiling." "I'd rather eat drywall," she deadpanned, making him laugh. They sat together at the table, eating and talking. Jack started making vague plans about converting the garage into a workshop, installing solar panels, maybe even building a treehouse for the future kid. Harper's stomach clenched. He didn't know she'd blocked his access to her financials the night before. He didn't know the house's deed had already been quietly shifted into a protected LLC, or that Eli and Travis were monitoring his movements from a distance with a motion-triggered wildlife camera set up in the woods. He doesn't know anything, she reminded herself. Jack leaned over and kissed her cheek. You make all this worth it, Harp. Really. She smiled. You're sweet. That afternoon, while Jack drove into town to pick up paint and surprise her with a new rug, Harper met Travis behind the old church on the edge of Glenwood Falls. He looked nothing like a cop. He wore jeans, a faded leather jacket, and mirrored sunglasses that hid his eyes. You were right to call it in, he said as he passed her a manila envelope. We pulled matching records in Ohio, Michigan, and Nebraska. Different names, same MO. All rich women, all quick engagements. One died under suspicious circumstances. Case was dropped due to lack of evidence. Harper's throat tightened. Jesus. Nothing stuck to him yet. But now we've got a real shot. You gave us a recording, a burner phone, and location history. Now we just need him in motion. In motion how? Trying to move assets, or harm you. That'll give us everything we need. She nodded. So I just wait? You play dumb. Give him rope. Harper hated the idea, but she knew it was necessary. Eli says you used to be a detective. Travis gave her a small smile. Still am, just not on the payroll. Back at the house, Harper returned just minutes before Jack pulled in, timing it perfectly. He came inside with a giant beige area rug folded over one shoulder. You are gonna freak when you see this. Feels like cashmere. Only $30. Can you believe that? Can't wait, Harper said, taking his coat like always. But later, as he hung a new mirror in the hallway, she noticed him check his phone 3 times in 5 minutes, each time carefully tilting it away from her. Not her phone. Not her line. Ulissa. Harper felt a fresh wave of nausea rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. Hey, she said gently. Remember how we talked about starting fresh? Like really clean slate? Jack looked over. Of course. What do you mean? I was thinking, maybe it's time I revise my will. Update some documents. You know, make sure everything's in place if we grow the family. He froze for a fraction of a second. Barely perceptible, but Harper caught it. That's a big step, he said slowly. You sure? I'm sure, she said, smiling. It's time. That night, Jack made a quiet call from the porch after Harper fell asleep. She wasn't sleeping. She was in the guest bedroom, listening through her hidden recorder. Yeah, he whispered. It's working. She brought it up herself. No pushback. I'll bring up power of attorney next. She thinks this is about a baby. A pause. No, I'll wait till she signs it first. No point in rushing. She wants this, and that makes her blind. There was a soft laugh. Yeah, she's better than the last one. No implants, no filters, totally natural. I almost feel bad about this one. Almost. The next morning, Harper stood with Travis behind the shed, watching live footage from the wildlife cam. They had installed a microphone now, and Jack's call had been recorded. Travis's jaw was tight. He just gave us everything. This is enough. I want to give him one more day, Harper said. Travis looked at her. Why? Because I want to look him in the eye when it happens. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. That evening, Jack poured 2 glasses of wine as they sat in front of the fireplace. Harper had never felt more like an actress. To us, he said. To the future, she replied. But the truth was, tomorrow, Jack wouldn't have one. The next morning, Harper woke early and sat at the kitchen table with a pen in her hand and a blank power of attorney form in front of her. She could hear Jack upstairs, whistling as he shaved. The sound made her skin crawl. She stared at the form. It was identical to the one Jack had placed in front of her months ago, back when they talked vaguely about merging assets, when trust still felt natural. He'd said, "It's just a formality." She hadn't signed it then. He'd backed off with a laugh and a kiss. Now she was ready. She scrawled her name across the bottom. Her real name. Then underneath it, in her careful lawyer's handwriting, she added a clause Jack would never notice, that it was conditional. Only valid with her physical presence. Only usable if she were alive. She printed 2 copies and left them on the table, neatly stacked. Morning sunshine. Jack sauntered into the kitchen, hair still damp, face freshly shaven. Coffee's on me today. You're generous, Harper said, smiling as she slid the papers toward him. I filled these out. Figured we could get the lawyer to notarize them in town. Jack blinked in surprise, then quickly masked it. Wow, that was fast. I told you, she said smoothly. I'm all in. He leaned down to kiss her forehead. This is why I love you. Her stomach turned, but she kissed his cheek back. Give me 10 minutes to change and we can head out. As Jack showered, Harper stepped onto the porch with her phone. She called Travis with one line. Today's the day. Understood, he said. We're in place. They drove into town together with the windows down. The air was crisp. Jack was in a great mood, tapping the steering wheel along with a song. Harper kept her gaze on the winding road ahead, her heart pounding like a drum. They pulled up to the Glenwood Falls legal office, a small, weather-worn brick building next to the post office. Inside, Travis waited in plain clothes, posing as the notary. Jack didn't recognize him. Just sign and date here, Travis said, handing over the papers. Jack scrawled his signature with the confidence of a man who thought he'd won. On the way home, Harper turned to him. I was thinking, tonight should be special. Jack raised an eyebrow. What'd you have in mind? A dinner. Candlelight. Just us. One last night before the renovation madness really begins. He smiled wide. You are full of surprises lately, "You don't know the half of it," she murmured. That evening, Harper set the table with her mother's silver and poured wine into crystal glasses. She lit candles and even played Jack's favourite old playlist, crooning 90s songs that once made her cringe. He came downstairs looking impressed. "I feel like I'm being seduced." "That was the plan," she said with a small smile. They ate slowly. She watched him more than she spoke. He noticed, of course, but interpreted it the way she wanted him to. "You're glowing tonight," he said, swirling his wine. "I feel free," Harper said. "I was scared, but now everything's clicking into place." Jack leaned forward, resting his hand over hers. "You have no idea how much that means." "I think I do." She let her hand linger in his, then stood. "I'll get dessert." As she walked into the kitchen, she heard her phone buzz. A message from Travis. "Officers are in position. Say the word." Harper stared at the message for a full minute, then turned off the screen and returned to the dining room, carrying 2 slices of pie. But when she entered the room, Jack was gone. The wine glass lay tipped over, dark red, spilling like blood across the white linen. The front door was ajar. Harper ran to the porch. "Jack?" Silence. Then a sound, soft but sharp, off to the side, near the trees. A rustle. She stepped cautiously toward the noise, but just as her foot touched the stone path, a hand grabbed her from behind, yanking her back hard. "You think you're clever?" Jack hissed in her ear. His breath was hot, his grip iron. Harper gasped. "Jack, what?" He spun her to face him. His eyes were wild now, glassy, frayed at the edges. "You think I didn't notice you watching me? You think I didn't hear you sneak into the attic?" His voice was low and trembling with rage. "You've been lying to me!" Her heart hammered. "So have you!" He shoved her back against the porch post. "What did you do, Harper?" "I recorded everything," she said. Jack's hand twitched. For a moment, she saw the decision forming in his eyes, whether to run or strike. And then, "FBI! Hands where we can see them!" Flashlights cut through the dark like lightning. Shouts, boots on gravel. Jack turned just in time to see Travis and 2 uniformed officers rush from the woods, guns drawn. "Drop her!" Travis barked. Jack let go and backed up slowly, hands raised, lips curled in a snarl. "She set me up! She's insane!" "You've been recorded twice," Travis said coldly. "It's over, Jack. Or should I say Cole Westin? Or maybe Jordan Chase rings a bell." Jack didn't move. Then, fast, he spun to run. But he only made it 2 steps before one of the officers tackled him hard to the ground. Harper stood frozen, chest heaving, her hands shaking. It was over. Later, Travis approached her where she sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving exhaustion in its place. "You okay?" he asked. She looked at him. "I think I will be." "You say it yourself," he said simply. "That's not nothing." "I just wish," she trailed off. "What?" "I wish I'd never met him." Travis didn't answer. He knew better than to offer hollow comfort. Instead, he stood quietly with her as the lights from the police cars flickered across the trees, and the house on Alder Lane finally went still. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. No music, no clinking tools, no footsteps in the hall. Just silence and the faint chirp of crickets beyond the open window. Harper sat at the kitchen table, untouched tea cooling beside her, staring at the space Jack had filled only yesterday. She had thought the arrest would bring closure, but it didn't. Not yet. Her body ached from tension, from the adrenaline crash. Her mind was still untangling lies, months of them, layered like sediment. How he'd learned her routines, her financials, her vulnerabilities. How he'd mirrored her dreams and fed her lines like a script. But the hardest part was knowing how much of it she wanted to believe. She looked down at her shaking hands. How do you forgive yourself for falling in love with a ghost? Later that day, Eli showed up with a brown paper bag of groceries and a warm box of donuts. "You look like someone who could use sugar," he said, setting everything down with care. Harper gave him a tired smile. "You didn't have to come," he shrugged. "I figured you might need a familiar face, or at least someone who knew the whole thing wasn't your fault." She stared at the donuts for a moment, then took one and bit into it. "Thank you," she said around a mouthful. "Seriously." Eli sat down across from her, fingers tapping the edge. "They're charging him in 3 states," he said. "He won't be out anytime soon. Might even face federal fraud charges if Travis pushes it." Harper nodded slowly. "They showed me the files. All the women." "Yeah," Eli said softly. "You weren't the first, but you were the last." She looked away. "I keep going back through it in my head, trying to find the moment I knew, the moment it flipped. You knew when it mattered." That night, Harper walked the property alone. The stars were out, clear and sharp. The air had that crisp edge of late summer, starting to shift toward fall. She stopped by the old oak tree near the fence line, the one Jack had once suggested building a swing on. It hit her then. The dream she'd built here wasn't dead. It had just been poisoned by the wrong person. Maybe this land could still hold something good. 2 days later, Travis invited her to the sheriff's office to listen to Jack's post-arrest interview. Harper didn't want to go, but she did. Jack sat behind the glass, handcuffed, head tilted, still trying to wear that same charming smirk. "She came on strong," he was saying. "Said she was lonely. She wanted someone to share everything with. I didn't force her to fall in love." Harper closed her eyes. His voice crawled under her skin like insects. "Then, did you plan to harm her?" the agent asked. Jack scoffed. "Harm her? No. I'm not a killer. I just knew how to leave when it was time." "But in the recording," the agent said, "you mentioned the last woman didn't make it." Jack shifted, his smile faltering. "That wasn't what I meant." Travis paused the recording. "You can leave if you want," he said gently. "We've got what we need." Harper stood and walked out without another word. She didn't need to hear more. Jack had already said everything he ever would by lying to her every day. Back home, Harper began boxing things up. She cleared out the bedroom closet, dumping the shirts Jack had left behind into a donation bag. She pulled his framed photo off the hallway shelf and tossed it into the trash bin without blinking. And then she opened the small wooden box she'd kept locked in the drawer since the beginning. Inside were her mother's pearls, her father's watch, the key to the lake house she hadn't visited in years. Things she hadn't trusted anyone with, not even Jack, especially not Jack. She set them gently on the nightstand. "Time to remember who I was before him," she thought, "and who I still am." That weekend, Eli returned to help with repairs. The broken porch railing, the drafty attic window. They worked quietly, comfortably, sharing lunch in the shade and talking about everything but Jack. As dusk fell, Harper stood with a brush in her hand, painting the front door a new color. Dark green. Fresh. Calm. Eli watched her for a while, then said, "You know, if you wanted to sell the place and leave it behind, nobody would blame you." Harper dipped the brush again and looked at the house. "No," she said, "he doesn't get to take this too." Eli smiled. "That's what I hoped you'd say." The next morning, Harper woke to sunlight pouring through the window. She dressed, brewed fresh coffee, and stepped out onto the porch. A new day. The house creaked and settled behind her, alive, somehow, even after all it had seen. She stood there quietly, breathing it all in. This isn't the end, she thought. It's just the middle. Autumn crept in slowly. Scarlet and gold bleeding into the trees that surrounded Alder Lane. The air turned brisk, the sky more crisp. Each morning, Harper wrapped herself in an old flannel and sipped her coffee on the front porch, letting the stillness settle deep inside her like a balm. But the house was no longer still. Not entirely. There were hammer sounds now, scraping, laughing, the occasional clatter of tools. Eli had insisted on helping, and with every loose shingle they replaced, every crooked stair they fixed, something deeper began to mend as well. Not between them, not yet, but in her. Harper learned how to repair floorboards, how to patch drywall, how to tell the difference between what was damaged and what was simply old but still strong. She realized the same applied to herself. One afternoon, while reorganizing the attic, Harper found the stack of renovation sketches Jack had drawn. They were meticulous. Layouts of the kitchen, ideas for a backyard studio, a small reading nook under the staircase. But none of them looked like her house anymore. She tucked them into a box labeled Past, sealed it, and carried it to the shed. From then on, she made her own plans. More light, less polish, fewer masks. The townspeople had begun to warm toward her again. At the cafe, the barista no longer gave her wary glances. At the hardware store, Mr. Keene offered her the good sandpaper without being asked. The whispers about Jack faded as the headlines moved on, replaced by stories of early snow and school board elections. Harper was rebuilding not just the house, but a place in this town. And maybe, in time, a place in herself. On a Saturday morning, Eli showed up with a surprise. A young maple sapling in the back of his truck. "Every good home deserves a good tree," he said, grinning. They planted it in the front yard together, near the old fence where Jack had once stood watching her. It felt like a quiet exorcism. "You ever think about leaving?" Harper asked as they patted the soil down. Eli leaned on his shovel. "Sure, but then I remember I miss this sky. And the quiet. And maybe now I miss you too." She met his eyes but said nothing. He didn't push it. Later that evening, when she brought out 2 mugs of cider, they stood on the porch in silence, watching the last of the sun drip behind the hills. That night, Harper couldn't sleep. She walked barefoot down the creaky hallway, past the bedroom that no longer made her flinch. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at her reflection. There were faint lines at the corners of her eyes now, a tiredness she hadn't seen before. But beneath it, something steadier, more rooted. She didn't cry any more when she thought of Jack. She just felt clean, empty in a good way, like a field after harvest, waiting. At sunrise, Harper walked down to the edge of the woods where the alder trees stood tall and quiet. She touched one of the trunks, her palm flat against its rough skin. Jack had hidden there, had watched her from this very spot. But now, the woods belonged to no one but the wind. "I'm still here," she whispered aloud, and the trees seemed to agree. Later that morning, she sat on the porch and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. She began to write, not legal memos, not to-do lists, but a story. Not about Jack, about a woman, a house, and a life that broke and still chose to grow back stronger. She titled it simply Alder Lane. The first snowfall came early that year. Just a dusting at first, soft, tentative, as though winter was gently knocking before coming in. By noon, the world was quiet beneath a clean white sheet. The porch railing wore a delicate cap of snow. The alder trees stood still and proud, their branches like long arms lifting toward the sky. Harper stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the flakes fall. She felt calm. Not happy, exactly. Not yet. But content in a way that had once seemed impossible. Her days had shape now. Meals she made for herself. Chores she chose to do. Moments of silence that didn't frighten her anymore. The house for all its bruises, felt like hers. Later that day, Eli arrived with a bag of groceries and his usual awkward smile. "You're supposed to let people bring things to you," Harper teased as she helped unload the bags. "I am bringing things to you." "Groceries don't count." "Then I'll bring something better next time," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" He paused for a beat, then gave her a slow, genuine smile. "You'll see." By Christmas, the house was glowing. Not with over-the-top decorations. Harper kept it simple. Pine garland on the mantel. A small tree with mismatched ornaments. A fire in the hearth. And beneath it all, that quiet sense of safety she built for herself. Eli came over that evening with 2 wrapped boxes and a bottle of wine. They exchanged gifts. Hers was a scarf he could wear while working outside. His was a leather-bound notebook with his name embossed on the front. "For all the stories you don't tell," she said. He looked at it a long time before nodding. They sat by the fire afterward, warm cider in hand, their laughter occasional but easy. At one point, Harper asked softly, "Do you think people like us ever really start over? Or are we just learning how to live with the mess?" Eli leaned back in the chair and thought. "I think starting over isn't erasing the past. It's just learning how to stop letting it control the page you're on now." She liked that. In early spring, Harper received a certified letter from the court. Jack had taken a plea deal, 22 years without the possibility of parole. She stared at the paper for a long time, then folded it, tucked it into a drawer, and left it there. It was no longer her story to carry. By the time summer returned, Harper had planted a garden behind the house. It wasn't perfect. The tomatoes grew lopsided, and the herbs tangled together in a messy sprawl. But it was alive, and it was hers. One afternoon, while weeding near the edge of the yard, she glanced up and saw Eli watching her from the porch. He held something behind his back. "What's that?" she called. He walked toward her and slowly revealed a swing. A simple wooden seat. 2 long ropes. "I thought maybe if you still wanted it." Harper stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. "I do." They hung the swing from the old oak tree at the edge of the property, the one Harper had once stood under alone, wondering if anything good could grow here again. Now it held her weight as she swung gently, feet brushing the earth, hair tossed in the breeze. Eli pushed her once, then let her glide on her own. The sun hung low in the sky, casting everything in golden light. The house behind her looked peaceful, whole. She leaned back, laughing softly as she sailed forward again. And for the first time in a long, long while, Harper Monroe felt free. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.